those are the two ways that we're aiming to work hard at really changing healthcare. And our hashtag is Heal Healthcare. That's really what we're after. We're after healing the model, both on the practitioner side and on the patient care side, specifically for chronic illness.
We are here today with Dr. Ruben Valdes on the Prospecting Show. How are you?
Great. How are you, Connor?
Awesome. So, one of the ways that I like to start off the podcast with the guest is to kind of get a framework of where you came from and what your business is and where you're going. So maybe you could share kind of your story to start it off.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently my business is called Novus Health, and there's a mother company called Novus Health Systems. We are the first franchised functional medicine system in the United States. We've been very, very fortunate to so far have 2 locations, third on their way. We've been operating for less than a year. As far as my story, much like many of your stories, big time entrepreneur, very comfortable with risk. I went to chiropractic school in Iowa, graduated after that, went to medical school in a school called the USAT in Miami, and, very quickly came into a market that was frustrating, unfulfilling. Managed healthcare is basically a joke in my very humble opinion, dealing with insurance, dealing with people telling me and telling my team how we had to care for our patients, just so much red tape, so much frustration, anger, patients that, were sick, were being managed for their sickness, but nothing was really being done to help them promote their health and become healthier versions of themselves. And so basically I came out into a market that was crazy, just crazy. And I knew that I was unfulfilled. I was unhappy. I was frustrated. So I've gone through so many steps. So it's such a big question, but at one period, I got the opportunity after I started reinventing the wheel with other providers, especially in the functional medicine space. I got the privilege and the opportunity to become a consultant for many other doctors through a company called the FM Shift. And after a few years of that, I realized that my mission was a lot bigger. Functional medicine is something that I've come to believe so much in. As a practitioner, as a doctor, I know and I have the certainty that it really is the solution for this chronic disease epidemic that we're dealing with in our country. And on one side, my vision and my business partner's vision, Dr. Valdes, is to be able to have functional medicine available in every corner, just like, you would a Massage Envy or a health, not a health source, but a Next or a primary care facility or Parsley, all of these centers that are now emerging, whether they're primary care, whether they're very specialized, specific type membership-based services, we are the first ones that are bringing this into the market for functional medicine providers. In addition to that, we want to be able to create a very, very solid business system, very solid marketing system for these doctors. So all they need to do is basically purchase a license. If they already have a practice, they can convert their practice into a Novus Health. And if they want to start from scratch, we help them do that too, so that they can move into a model of business within the functional medicine space that's already being incredibly successful. So, that's the abbreviated version of everything that we're doing.
Yeah, and that's great to be able to kind of go take it backwards and explain the need, right? Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of entrepreneurs come up with an idea mostly because they don't like the way something's being done, right? They kind of ask themselves that question. They go, could I do it better? Or could I do it differently, right? And that's really essentially what you guys have done, because you're taking something that has been around for a little bit, right? Functional medicine's been around for a bit, but it hasn't really been deployed yet, at least in the United States, at a level that is very systematized and practical, right? It's kind of just different providers in different places trying to get it done, but you guys are now trying to build systems and processes around an actual practice. Is that right?
Absolutely, and I couldn't have said it better myself. We're really aiming to fix 2 problems. First problem is the lack of access at a very large scale to this service. This service is, when properly executed and deployed, is allowing millions of patients to walk away from prescription medications that they would otherwise need to take lifelong. It reduces their risk for complications dramatically. Just last year, there was a big study called the PROMISE study demonstrating how functional medicine improved health outcomes so much more dramatically. It was put out by the Cleveland Clinic than conventional management for people that are dealing with chronic illness. So that's the first problem we want to fix. And you're absolutely right on that side. There's so many providers out there saying, hey, I do functional medicine, and they're like energy healing you or God knows, we want to have a very standardized definition of what it is that it means to go to a functional medicine center. In addition to that, from the entrepreneur side, we want to be able to put doctors that have worked and studied or have the desire to study and become very proficient and very successful in the field of functional medicine. We want to put them in a position where they're going to be sure that they can succeed financially in their mission. And we believe all these things are profoundly tied in. A doctor that's not succeeding financially, trust me, is not succeeding in their mission. They won't have the reach. They won't have the technology. They won't have the ability to educate themselves and keep themselves updated. They won't have the ability to really deliver the best goods to their patients because they don't have the capital. They don't have the bandwidth. They're stressed. They're beat down by the sense of frustration that so many of us have experienced in the past. And so it's so important for us to be able to make those dreams, make those hopes, those aspirations of the provider come true so they can be in a place where they're really delivering the goods in a very powerful and life transforming way. So those are the two ways that we're aiming to work hard at really changing healthcare. And our hashtag is heal healthcare. That's really what we're after. We're after healing the model, both on the practitioner side and on the patient care side, specifically for chronic illness.
And with the experience you've had so far with branching out yourself and kind of going down a different pathway than maybe what else exists out there, what would you say the number one problem has been in terms of adaptation or adoption in the marketplace? Do you find that people are supportive? Do you find that people don't get it? Like, what has your experience been so far?
Well, it's been so interesting. So the first thing is when we use the word franchise, people immediately, you can tell that their face just kind of changes and shifts because they don't really understand what the implications of that really are. And they start thinking like, is this going to be like McDonald's or something like that? And the reality is it's nothing further from the truth. Clinicians, doctors have freedom of practice, absolute freedom of practice to make their decisions. If not, it would be the corporate practice of medicine. So clinicians in these practices, in these locations have absolute freedom. And once they understand that, it's like, there's a sigh of relief that comes over them. What we're doing for them is building a system that's already in a short time, in less than a year, it's created a name for itself nationally, has a very, very dialed in marketing and patient acquisition system, has a strong financial profit first model that allows the doctor to capitalize from the beginning of treatment and then to continue capitalizing from from a monthly membership and other source of income within that practice model. So the main thing, really, the main challenge has been taking the idea to professionals that a franchised business model is so in their best interest. And here's what we've learned, especially with the first few locations. Some really heavy hitting doctors that teach at the IFM and some of the highest educational centers. These guys are rock stars clinically. They're brilliant, but they've struggled for so many years to really be able to have a center, a business that supports their brilliance clinically. And it's been so rewarding to see these doctors move into a position where they can succeed and really capitalize on all their skill and all their talent. And so I would say that has been the major challenge. But once that's understood, it very quickly becomes the very thing that they've been looking for so long.
And when you have these conversations with some of these doctors, right? Maybe people who've been in practice for, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 years, doesn't really matter. Are they open once they get over the hurdle of the franchise component, which, like you said, some people get very nervous about that idea. Once they get over that hurdle, do you find that most people have a good understanding of why having systems, processes, and procedures are a good thing and not just like running around like a chicken with their head cut off? Or do they kind of step back and say, hey, I like the way I do things?
Oh no, most people tend to be very, very, very compelled by the proposition of what we're doing. The interesting thing about it is we've decided to be very selective on the way that we bring on location. And it's kind of hard to say this and to be public about this, but the reality is not everybody is a good fit to represent a brand, a mission based brand at a large scale. Um, in that process, we kind of find everything. We've had people sitting across us with a $40,000 check for a license, and we've declined taking them on as a location because they just don't necessarily fit what we want. What we want what we want representing us and who we are. So I think that most people are really on the opposite side. Most people that have approached us are in a place where once they understand it, once they understand the benefit of purchasing a business that's already succeeding versus reinventing the wheel, that's a very easy concept to understand. The bigger obstacle is then figuring out if they're a good fit for what we do, and that's kind of the hardest part because it's very difficult having somebody ready to go with money at hand and just saying, you know what, you just don't meet the criteria that we look for, and it's just not a good fit at this time. And that has a lot to do with so many things. Work ethic is huge for us. When we're evaluating a prospective location, we want to make sure that this is somebody that initially is willing to put in the time and the effort, that they don't have other businesses going on that would really polarize and separate their time from their main focus to get this going. Once these locations reach about 150 members, the process that can take about 18 to 24 months, then it's really easy to kind of take the foot off the gas. And sometimes you don't even have to acquire new members. You already have enough recurring revenue to have a really good business, to have a really good practice. And so there's people that based on current commitments we know they wouldn't really have the ability to put the pedal to the metal for 18 to 24 months to grow the location the way that it needs to be grown. So that's one thing. Sometimes too, we've come across people who the only thing that's on their mind, you can see it on their forehead, is a big dollar sign. And we all want financial success, and it's not difficult through a very good business system to have success. But when that's the only motivating factor, that really creates um, discord with what our mission is. Our mission is patient centric. Our mission is designed to really elevate the quality of life of our individual patients, of their families, of our communities, and ultimately of our nation as a whole. When that mission is clear, the finances always come when someone's following that mission. But sometimes when somebody, the only thing that they're interested in is just making a lot of money, even though it's very possible within a model like this, it's not really a good fit for us, right? So that's a hard thing to say, and that's a hard thing to open up publicly about, but it really is important for us. And so um, right now, the third location, I'll give you a little bit of insight, is being opened by two doctors, two female doctors. They're amazing. And we had a little bit of issue initially because one of them is super gung ho, super passionate, wants to succeed. The other one more like, well, I just want to, work part time and do these things and come in every once in a while. So it wasn't until we were all on the same page that we ultimately felt comfortable in pulling the trigger. And when we began to research franchises that have been very successful, historically, the ones that have really made it and have become very large and very impactful have done so by being very selective on who it is they bring on to ensure their individual success, the franchisee or the location success, but also the success of the franchisor.
And where do you see the focus going as you guys expand? Is it a? I know you talked about the kind of the psychographic profile of the individuals that you're looking to partner with in this business, but is there a specific geographic area or specific kind of rollout plan that you see over the next couple of years, or is it really just focused on USA wide and finding the right fit from the doctor perspective?
That's a great question. Okay, so we've made a decision to unpack the Colorado market first and the North Carolina, specifically the Charlotte metro area first for a few different reasons. These two areas, we are acting as franchisors, as area developers. So some of the locations will be corporately owned. Some of them will be franchise locations if they fit the profile. And so in the Denver metro area, we've done something called geo mapping to make sure that each location can reach 2 million annual revenue in 3 to 5 years. So they do that by, I mean, Big Brother stuff, very specialized demographic, people with, certain income profiles, certain family profiles. All of that is fed into an algorithm that tells us exactly in which regions these locations should be to ensure that when we plant the flag there, they're going to be able to get to where they need to go. So Colorado and Charlotte. Right now, we have some big players in the industry looking at us very closely. And they've told us we want to see a little bit more proof of concept. And they believe that once we're at the fifth location, they can from there begin to help us obtain area development. And that's when very rapid growth tends to happen. Area developers are people that would come in and say, I live in California and I want to develop LA and San Diego. I'll give you a down payment on 10 licenses and I want to go ahead and open all these locations. For two people, and we're a total team of five right now, it's too much to try and undertake a national growth strategy like that without having very key area developers as part of this project. So right now, our focus is on these two markets. We're unfolding them. Charlotte is on track to open its second location in the next 3 months. And so once we get to 5 locations in Denver, 3 locations in Charlotte, and they're showing proof of concept very consistently, like the first three have already, I think that we are going to be in a really good place to begin our area development strategy.
That's awesome. And having that selective nature, I think, is really important too, because your point to the whole franchise, people look down on the franchise concept. A lot of that comes down to the poor selection, right? If you have a Subway or you have a McDonald's in the food space, a lot of people would look upon, certain regions and say, well, why does this McDonald's not do as well? Or why is it not as good? Well, a lot of that has to do with, the selection of the people who run the franchise, not the whole brand itself, right? Like, McDonald's is McDonald's, but you certainly can make it seem a little different if you don't do a good job, right?
For sure. And let me give you a few examples along those lines. There's right now a physical therapy franchise. It's amazing. It's called Physical, and they're on track to have over 400 locations before the end of this year. And they've done an incredible job. Each location is incredibly profitable. Physical therapists, which kind of suffer from the same syndrome, right? Being very talented, very skilled, but not very skilled in having a good, healthy, sustainable business model. They're thriving all over the country. There's a primary care system called Next. Again, they're probably about 12 locations right now. They're newer, but they're also doing really, really well, and each location is succeeding. And if we talk about, being selective, the father of this at one point was Chick-fil-A, who is extremely selective in who they allow, and their list of people wanting to own one of these businesses and the process to be able to obtain one is very difficult. First of all, if you plant them where they tell you you're going to plant them, you're going to be very, very successful. They also look very closely at your work ethic, your other commitments, your ability to operate successfully, your track record, and they make sure that once that location goes down and it's planted, it's going to be super successful. So in healthcare, we are emulating that model, and there's so many factors that play. Some people might be listening to this and saying, "Hey, I don't have a lot of training in functional medicine, or I'm not versed at all in functional medicine." That's actually very easy to fix. That part's not hard. We've partnered with some major education companies, and we have certain course tracks. So in a short period of time, somebody can become very clinically competent. But the other part of that, right? This courageousness, this work ethic, this commitment to a mission. That's something that we can't teach, right? That's something that you either have or don't have. But if you do have, then we know that you're going to be one of the people that when the location goes down, you're going to succeed. And so that's kind of the world that that I've been involved in over the last year. It took us about 8 months to develop the entire concept, the FDD. We've paid, a fortune to attorneys to make sure this thing is super dialed in and that our systems are perfected through some of the biggest consultants in the country, some of the best healthcare attorneys, make sure that everything is in line with state laws and everything. So, in the time that it took us 8 months with our prototype concept in Charlotte to the moment of launch, it's been really, really exciting to see how it's just driving so much attraction for providers in this space or that want to move into this space.
And so for the people who might be interested in investigating this, I know you have your selection process, but like what would be the best way for them to find out a little bit more, maybe get in contact with you, just to kind of start that discovery process, provided that they're in, the two areas you're looking for right now?
Yeah, so right now there's a few ways. We have a lot of information currently on our LinkedIn page. So they can go to either Dr. Ruben Valdes or Dr. Ryan Valencic. We just redid our website. We had an original website and we're in the process of really bulking it up because we now have a system that will funnel people into the different markets that we're looking to open. So that one should be up by probably next Tuesday. It's novushealthsystems.com. My personal cell phone, 720-635-3850. That always seems to help. Dr. Valencic is the person that ultimately makes the decision when it's time to release a license. So if somebody reaches out to me, I'll kind of talk to them, provide information, and if they seem to be a good fit, then we can kind of move the conversation up to that level. So those are right now probably the three best ways for those of you that want to see what our consumer side looks like. That would be Novis, Novis health.com. That'll give you a really strong sense of what our consumer site looks like, what our service site looks like. So probably those would be the best ways.
And what would you say the last piece of advice that you could give to people kind of as a wrap up here? Like what is the most important thing that you think people should be looking for as this functional medicine kind of shift happens over time here and these clinics start opening up? What's the biggest piece of advice you give for someone who's in practice?
Yeah, super easy question. I have a really good friend. He's a major investor, an angel investor in Colorado. And when he saw our model, he said, "This is brilliant. And here is why. For years, and this happens to a lot of people, we work hard, really hard, to recreate the wheel and open a business and build a business." And he said, "As an investor, I've learned that the very best thing to do is to actually purchase a business that's already had a proven track record." system that's succeeding and creating success over and over again. So if you're out there, whether you're coming out of school, you're starting, you don't know what to do, it's kind of confusing, overwhelming. If you're a veteran with 8, 10, 12 years in practice and you're feeling beat down by a system, a model, or a way of practice that's just robbing your soul, the best thing is always to invest in something that's already proven, something that has a strong track record, and something that can ensure that you're going to have success. So if there is one piece of advice that the the school of life has given me, is that one. So yeah, that would be my closing statement.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the prospecting show. I know that's a lot for some people to take in terms of the business model, but I think that innovation around the business and kind of changing the current healthcare system is not an easy feat, and you guys are well underway to be a contributor to that model. So I thank you for your time on the prospecting show here, and hopefully we get some awesome listener feedback.
Okay, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, Connor. I love what you're doing, and thank you to all your listeners.
Absolutely.